Harleen issue 1 by Stjepan Šejić. The trick is just to put a weird accent and just pretend like I know what I'm doing as I say the name. Who does both the art, of course, as we'd expect, because that's what we know him for, but also the writing in this case. And it's funny, I got a little bit worried at the start of this book, because I felt like for an artist who's as great as he is, it felt weird how many words he likes to put on the page to cover up his own art.
Yeah.
But I actually have to admit, I was kind of into this.
Yeah, I kind of love this.
Yep. It's a lot, though.
It is a lot. It's a long
issue.
issue.
To read.
Yeah.
I was told to you guys, like, oh, we're going to be ready to start on time. I was like, it should be. I've got 4 or 5 issues.
I warned you yesterday.
No, you did. I didn't think it was this long.
It is a long book.
And to be fair, I didn't go to my shop till today, so.
Yeah. And I don't want to make it sound like a complaint that it feels long, because you get your money's worth.
Oh yeah, it's not that it feels long. It just is long. It feels how long it is.
Yeah, because it is extra pages, and
it's a lot of extra pages.
It's like I got to a certain point and I was like, I can't have that much left. And then I looked, I was like, oh, I'm only like a third of the way done.
Yeah, this has like I think this is like 50 actual pages of story. It's more than double of a regular book.
Yeah,
it's a very long.
I picked it up physically because I felt like I missed out on Batman Damned with that widescreen format that they were referring to it as. I was like, Joe, what, Harley, I love Šejić art. I'm gonna, I'll go and buy it physically because it's nice enough.
Do you know what's interesting reading about it in digital though, compared to the regular books, is that instead of having thin black bars at the sides of the tablet, I have them at the top and bottom now. It's weird because it's a slightly different shape. It's so even though you think, oh, it doesn't matter because you're reading digital, there is kind of a different feel to it.
To be fair, I have a different tablet. You have an iPad, right, which has different dimensions. On my tablet, the bars are always at the top and bottom. They're just bigger bars now. As they have to be.
That's interesting.
That's how widescreen works, which, it feels like I'm losing a lot of my page on a tablet, a lot of my screen.
That's interesting. I would say I prefer my tablet ratio then, because much like the philosophy of a TV, it's better to have something in the middle of the ratios than it is to, have one of the extreme ends. That's why 4:3 sucked, because when you watch movies that were like proper widescreen, it was like all these black bars and then just a little thin slither of image in the middle.
Yeah, which, to be honest, on most comics, it's the bars at the top and bottom are almost unnoticeable. There's not that much of them. The fit is pretty good. On these widescreen ones, I feel it, which is why I've gone for the physical.
I think it's a testament, though, that just a subtle difference like that, much like a movie, the aspect ratio does give it a different feel. There is a different stylistic feel to it. Just from that alone.
Especially with because he has a lot more panels across than you ever would normally get on a regular page, and you do feel that.
Yeah, no, so this is the origin of Harley Quinn. This is like doing the story. And I think what's impressive about this is I typically don't get into Harley Quinn books. We tried the Jodie Hauser one, and it wasn't terrible, but it's just, I'm not interested.
But you like Jodie Hauser.
And I like Jodie Hauser, yeah. So that's why it's notable that I didn't even like that. But I think, after I wasn't necessarily super into the first couple pages of the dream sequence. Like, I thought it was just kind of, okay, whatever. But once it
was visually impressive, but you were like, okay.
Story-wise, it wasn't really hitting me. It wasn't until it actually got to sort of the main story of her, like, kind of, trying to, like, prove her theory about empathy and, like, criminals, and how that leads her to getting a job eventually at Arkham, which is a big part of the plot of this first issue, is, like, her getting to Arkham, and then just how, like, difficult it is to actually, talk to these criminals. Yeah,
especially Joker, because she has a traumatic experience with Joker.
Yeah,
early on. Yeah,
but before she's going to interview him,
she's had like a bad day trying to, like, give this talk about her theory, and when she's walking home after some drinks, she's there's a Joker like crime incident like nearby, and has a run-in with him where he holds a gun to her head, and she thinks her life might be over, and he just decides randomly to not shoot her. That's basically it.
Because he's the Joker, and then he goes off onto some things. And I will say, Joker's a character. It's not that I don't enjoy him. I enjoy him in certain books. This is one that Šejić's voice for the Joker I read entirely as Mark Hamill.
So did I, actually. Right? Yeah, I did too.
And especially in scenes like this where he goes to get away, Batman basically shows up in the Bat. I will say the Batwing.
Yeah.
It also gave me shades of Nolan, like.
Yeah.
So
it looks very militaristic, this Batwing. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has the Batwing come through, and it wrecks this van that he's stealing, and the driver that he was just talking to, Joker, goes through the window and is basically pleading for help. And Joker looks at him and is like, huh, you know what? You were always one of my favorite to talk to because I thought you were smart, but you weren't smart enough to put on a seatbelt.
Yeah, just because we're criminals doesn't mean we have to be dumb criminals.
Yeah, right? And so there's a lightness to balance out the darkness of Joker, and I feel like we've had so much of Batman Who Laughs.
Oh, sure,
right?
yeah.
And we've had so much of Snyder's Joker, who I just don't enjoy, that this felt like a breath of fresh. Between this and White Knight, it felt like a breath of fresh air. So a lot of the lightness here, and then he turns around and hits with the darkness.
Yeah, I love the page. See when they're in the smoke. You know, Batman's dropped like a smoke pellet or whatever, and it's just like Batman picking off the henchman from the smoke. Like his hands are coming out.
There's a panel a little bit later in the fight. Is after Joker gets thrown out of the smoke into the wall, and Harley sees him, and then he's dragged back in by the grapple gun.
Yeah.
And
then you have.
I imagine him waving to her as he's getting pulled back in. You don't actually see that, but in my brain,
imagine it.
I imagined it.
But there's a Harley watching the fight. And it's the light coming through through the smoke and these huge shadows and obviously because the light is refracting through, it's not just one solid shadow, it's all the it's how light actually interplays that typically you don't see in a lot of comics, like this level of detail on the shadows, and it's crazy impressive.
And then you get that beauty shot,
2-page spread with Batman and Joker. Do you know what, like first of all, it looks gorgeous, and have Cedric draw some Batman. Let him be the artist on like a big Bat book at some point, please.
Oh, please. That said, he has. I think he probably said early last year.
Yeah, I remember him saying this. I know. He said that he only wanted to write his own, draw his own material, but
here I feel like we're getting everything we'd want in a Bat book,
possibly
because of all the characters that show up. It's not just like.
What I like about this though, this book, is that it feels like we're getting some form of definitive origin for Harley. Like it's like we're going to spend time over the 3 or 4 issues, whatever it is. And
it's 3.
Is it 3? I mean, they're obviously long issues, so it's fine. But they're the big meaty issues. But this is going to be a great trade. This is going to be a great graphic novel to say, hey, you like Harley Quinn? Here's a very serious take on the origin of Harley Quinn.
Fantastic
hardcover. The time that he spends, so we find out that her whole thing is she wants to basically develop a system to make people have empathy, because she was dealing with this vet that came back from over there, and he basically talks about how you can't, when you're a soldier, you can't personify the enemy because that makes it harder to do your job, but he didn't want to be responsible for killing women and children.
But the idea is that Gotham has done this to a lot of the criminals. Yeah,
and so, but her whole thing is like, if I can break through to a vet who's seen it the worst, then we can do this in Gotham, and then Arkham won't have the turnover rate. So as she gives this, thing, it gets picked up by Lucius Fox, and then that's how she gets hired into Arkham. But while all that's going on, Joker's in her brain because of what had happened, like this traumatic experience.
He's in her brain the entire time, and she's scared to talk to him. Like she's avoiding even thinking about him or even looking at his archives of previous interviews and stuff like that. And what I really like about this book is that I like that it's not jokey Harley. I like that this is actually dealing with the genuine messed up nature of how he gets into her life. It feels like an actual thriller. It feels like a thriller about this woman being overtaken by this force.
Because of course Joker is a huge element of this book. How can he not be in a Harley origin story? But it's her story.
But that's always been my main problem with Harley and her origin is it was done for a TV series, right? So there wasn't time for it to be decompressed like it's being here. And I always had a problem with this psychiatrist that, maybe she came from a tough bring up, but she just joins Joker so quick, and she's able just to throw society away to run off with him. But here, it seems like there's so much more going on.
Do you know what this is?
It's going to be such a tragic fall.
Do you know what this is?
Yeah.
This is basically the equivalent of like Batman's origin in Batman issue 1 was 2 pages, and then decades later someone said, hey, we should do a year 1 story where we actually go through the beats and what the story of him accepting this is. This is Harley's equivalent of that, where Harley gets to actually, in a decompressed way, process the actual journey of being taken over by this madman.
Yeah. Do you know what? This could have been called Harley Quinn Year 1.
It could have been.
that would have been a better year one this year than
The
Flash.
Flash. It would have
Well,
been.
yeah, and here's the thing, because it's not just a Harley book. Like, yeah, she's the star of it, but we get to see Harvey Dent as DA. You know, Hugo Strange is the administrator at Arkham, right? He's running the show.
Yeah.
And then we get to see a ton of Bat villains that she interviews,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Ivy, pre-Harley Ivy relationship.
Yeah.
I think
So
Croc's in
Ivy,
there.
Zaz, Mad Hatter,
Yeah, Croc's in there, I'm sure.
Croc,
No,
all of
it's,
these ones, and again, I mentioned Lucius shows up,
But-
so it very could be like if they, you know,
I think what I like about it, apart from the fact that it's serious and not jokey Harley, obviously she's going to become that by the end, but I don't think it's going to be funny. I think this feels like a tragedy to me. This feels like a tragedy from the start.
It's when she's Harley Quinn at the end of this book, in the Jester outfit that we get a glimpse of early on in this issue.
Yeah.
It's not going to be funny. It's tragic. She's broken.
And maybe this is against what most people want from a Harley Quinn story, but I don't want a Harley Quinn to be Deadpool. I want a Harley Quinn to be this sad story of this woman who's been taken over.
That's if this sticks the landing, if Šejić can do it, this could turn me into a Harley fan.
Yeah.
Mind you, not that I'm going to go out there and read every Harley thing, but
Sure.
I won't be nearly as annoyed as, you know,
It's
when she pops up like she does.
I would say a similar thing about. We'll get to it more, but Curse of the White Knight. The Harley in that is a very similar kind of concept take to this. In that, okay,
and it might be
serious.
That too, where it just need a better take. That the take that we've had isn't a take that I like. But what they're doing with this is getting away from the New 52 Harley, you know.
Yeah. And I say I say that as someone who kind of loves the Amanda Conner and Palmiotti Harley.
There's
stuff.
room for it, but not when that's all there is. Because I feel like Harley is this, like, I like the Harley and Ivy book more than Pete did, obviously. And if I have room for it, I'll keep reading it. It wasn't because of quality. It was just if it comes out on a busy week.
I mean, it ties into
sacrifice it.
My favorite interpretation of the Joker typically tends to be more where he's scary, where he's a horror villain almost, because he's so psychotic and evil. And Harley, by her nature, should be this tragic victim of the Joker who's been overtaken by him.
Yeah, well, and I like here where she's kind of like, well, no, I've watched all your tapes, right? When she finally gets to interview him, and he goes, "Oh, I was looking forward to telling you those stories." And he's like, "Oh, can you believe the doctor believed that one? How he's
that's
a
the other
matron of
thing.
an orphanage?"
It does the multiple origin thing where he tells every therapist he talks to a different origin story.
Different story, right? But see, so I understand why you like the horror Joker, but like I really love Mark Hamill, Batman animated series Joker, where he's a crime guy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's an evil crime guy that can function on the outside, where he's not just this, you know, like King's version that we got, who's a complete total sociopath that can't function. You know, I kind of like the combination.
Yeah, well,
of
I think Joker and
Dark Knight Joker and Hamill Joker.
Yeah, Joker and Harley from the animated series, though, like I don't think they go against what I like about my versions of those characters. I think they are obviously toned down to fit on a TV show for kids because they have to be. They can't be too, you know, crazy and evil and dark. So to me, the animated series is like a sort of like a kid-friendly version of what I like about those characters. But if we're doing the more serious take, like I want Heath Ledger Joker from Dark Knight. I want that.
I get that.
That character.
Bar none, my favorite Joker. Although this is pushing, but I feel like he's pulling, like Šejić's pulling the best versions of Joker. You know, because when we first see him here, when he's walking with the gang, I got Dark Knight. Right,
I got like a cleaner version of Dark Knight because he feels a bit more slick in this, which I don't actually.
Do you know what it is? It's Dark Knight by way of what they wanted from the Suicide Squad. that kind of that mobster Joker that they wanted, like obviously didn't work, but that's kind of what this. No.
I'm not against
that's what this
a bit of mobster Joker by any means. I definitely don't like it as much as like Dark Knight or even like Azzarello's Joker or you know whatever.
Clown Prince of Crime. I love that nickname for him, right? Where he's, you know.
That said, much like Matt, though, I did hear Hamill's voice when I was reading these dialogues, so the voice is there.
After Batman arrives on the in the Batwing, he goes, "Oh, anyways, my apologies, Bats," and you can just hear that in Hamill.
Yeah.
And I try to read it as Ledger Joker.
As Leatherface? Right? I was gonna say Leatherface.
No, as Ledger Joker when you first see him, because I got those vibes. And I was like, oh no, he's definitely pitching Šejić
That's a concoction
for that Hamill.
but
right,
it's worth mentioning.
It's more Hamill in the Arkham games, where it's a bit more darker and got the
Sure,
edge.
yeah, I can see that. But
Which,
Harley, for example, though, I'm not hearing the Harley voice yet, but I shouldn't
No.
be because she's not Harley yet. She's
No.
she's Harleen Quinzel.
Which is weird that I'm hearing more of the, as weird as it sounds, like a Scarlett Johansson kind of delivery.
I can picture that.
Become that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Like,
don't really have any particular. It's just a sort of neutral,
Yeah.
normal person's
Yeah.
voice I have in my head.
It's not Margot Robbie or the voice of Harley, which I'm blanking on the actress's name from the animated series.
I can tell you
Tara
Tara
Strong.
Strong from later, but it's not Tara
From
Strong in the
later,
animated series.
Yeah, it's not Tara Strong. It's the
not.
original.
It's
I can't.
Oh, Arlene Sorkin. No, it's Arlene something, right?
Yeah.
Connor, Google it.
Anyways,
I'm on
Google it, Connor, and then let us know. But do her thing here. And my one complaint about this, right, was I don't know if this is the editing or if this is a choice on Šejić, right? But it's a Black Label book. They can be a little bit more.
Well, no, Matt, I've got more of a complaint on
language.
this than you. There's an F-bomb
Right.
that's not censored at one point in this book, and then later on they do censor one, and I don't know
Yeah,
why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Arlene
and
Sorkin.
I was right, Arlene Sorkin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me
Nailed it.
points. Why did Matt look at me like I was a crazy man?
I didn't. I was just like, did he? Is it right? Is it not? Or is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
just a
We
voice
just
that
weren't
know?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So I understand why they censored it, but if you're gonna censor one F-bomb, censor them all. Or if you're not gonna censor them,
Honestly,
don't censor them.
I think it was a mistake because I don't understand why. Because what would the reason be to censor one and not the other? That's odd.
How it's used, one's more graphic because it's talking about the act versus being just used as an expletive.
Frustration was.
I
is-
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right, because they say, bullshit, and they say other ones throughout
It's
this.
just so it's so weird
But the
though. Cause
the F gets censored when her coworker is like, "Oh, who did you F to get this job?"
yeah.
But it wasn't written like who the F. It was censored, And then
If it wasn't for the context, I would almost assume it's a C-bomb, just because. Maybe they'll
Right?
censor that still because they don't want to go that
Yeah.
far.
But so I'm guessing because of that. But was it editorial just coming in and the original script it was left? But yeah, but I'm thinking, well, maybe even in Black Label they can't drop the F-bomb. They can, drop other ones.
But they do.
But that's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
in the Joker
but
scene.
then they do
Yeah.
later. And then that's why I was like, okay, well, I kind of want to get to the bottom of that. Not that it really changes anything, but just for the
That's
consistency
weird.
of
Yeah.
one
I'll
or
tell you
the
what.
other.
I'll tell you what I liked as well. So when she's in Arkham and she's doing all the research, and I love this feel because months pass when she's there, and it feels like she's really avoiding the Joker. She's having these nightmares. Obviously, a nightmare at the start of the book is actually the nightmare she seems to have when she switches sides. Because
Yeah.
she talks about in that first opening nightmare scene about how it's usually the Joker who's the monster, but now Batman's the monster, and Joker's there to be
And
with her, kind of thing.
The Batman is a monster.
He is, yeah,
It
yeah.
is
He's
a
like
huge
horrific.
demonic thing.
yeah.
But what I like about there's a scene where she sees Harvey Dent, who's not
Yeah,
Two-Face
yeah.
yet. And what I like about this is that this kind of neatly, because I always, even though technically I'm not exactly in continuity, my head canon's always kind of been that you have year one, you have a couple of things after that. The Man Who Laughs is the first Joker appearance. If I'm recommending trades to people to read some Batman
Right.
comics, this is kind of here's the early years Batman that I'll recommend, right? This kind of places it neatly just before Long Halloween for me,
Yep.
because she says that she goes to see Harvey Dent and he's saying, "Hey, if you prove this theory, every defense attorney in Gotham's going to try and use this to stop us from prosecuting." And he's kind of upset at her, and she makes a comment at one point about how within 6 months both of us will be killers, and there's a panel of hers, Harley.
Murderers.
Or murderers, yeah, and him as Two-Face. And I thought, oh, this kind of neatly puts it right before Long Halloween, because that's
Yep.
when he becomes Two-Face in my head. So I'm like, that's kind of neat.
Yep.
I like
And-
that
and
this will
I-
fit
and I
into
like-
that.
And I like that too, because technically they're both on the same side, right? Except now they're up against it because she wants to actually fix something where he's like, no, this is not how the rules work. This is not how the rules are written.
Yeah.
They go to Arkham because they're, quote, crazy, but that doesn't change anything of what they've done. That place is a revolving door, and I want to, right? and then he falls victim to the same thing, right? So
Absolutely,
that adds to his tragedy as well.
And it also fits as well though,
page.
because all the other villains that we see, like Ivy and Croc and Mad Hatter, they all exist in Long Halloween. So for me, this just kind of neatly slides in there as like roughly in continuity with that.
Yeah, and just the way too, like that he plays with the Riddler's dialogue. I love too with the
escape.
Yeah. Like, did anyone else not read the next panel and were working out for themselves?
I did. Yes. No. I worked it out before I read the next panel, and she just said it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I liked all that, and then you have the Hugo Strange factor, right? Of him running Arkham, and just how broken is the system when someone that should be in there is the one that's running it.
Well, yeah, again, this is early days of Batman's career, though. So
I know.
What I'm saying is, though, is this is before they know Hugo Strange is.
No, I know that, but we know this, so it just shows how broken that system is when you have the DA telling you.
I'm just saying that I like again where it places it in the early Batman timeline. I like all the things that kind of slot it in where it should be.
Yeah, well, no, that's not a complaint. I'm just making the observation here.
Just on the swearing thing, I just had an idea. You know, the first instance is the one that is censored. I wonder if it's so that you think, okay, that's just what the rules we're playing by, and then when she drops, the F-bomb in frustration later, it has a lot more impact because it kind of catches you off guard.
That's kind of weird, but
I don't know.
I mean, I know obviously PG-13 movies get one F-bomb, but it's kind of weird to have another one and censor it. Don't use it again.
But
and Black Label, they are marketing as adults, so
and that's my whole thing too. Is like sure, but if that was your states, you have the character kind of censor it, right? Instead of.
And, I like that. They have this backstory where she didn't really like guys her own age, and she had kind of a fling with a lecturer in college, and it's kind of earned her this reputation, kind of unjustly, where everyone just assumes she's going to sleep around to get what she, her better job or whatever. They assume this is a stigma that's followed her because of one thing.
I also read that is when her heart's into something, she throws it all out the window for that. Like, she knew she wasn't supposed to have it with the fling with the teacher, but she did. So that sets the stage for Joker later. Like, oh, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this, but the heart wants. Oh, sure,
yeah. It sets up a pattern in her behavior,
yeah.
Right, and so then again, it's more believable than just like, oh, the psychiatrist just broke bad because she fell in love with the Joker. Maybe the Joker doesn't feel the same way.
This is a proper tragic story.
Yeah, right.
And she finally goes to see Joker at the end, and it's a very Silence of the Lambs. Just the glass between them, and he kind of he's like, oh, you look familiar, and then he bangs the glass, and then she jumps back in fear, and he's like, oh yeah, that's no, I remember you. I just needed the fear in your eyes to truly recognize you, and. It's like, oh, we're going to actually talk about this, and he's like, okay. He's kind of like, you're more interesting because you've actually looked at all these other stories. And he's like, hey, please just call me Jay. And the final page is her, and it's the shadow on the wall behind her of him looking at her, and she's like,
so menacing.
Yeah, very well, Mr. J. And obviously, she's not saying Mr. J yet, Harley.
But again, it's like, okay, it's that first seed, isn't it?
Yeah.
I kind of fist pumped when I got to that because I was like, oh shit, they got me. Cedric got me.
Yeah.
Holy, that cover for issue 2, by the way, because it gives you the advert for the next book at the end. That cover for issue 2 is
so good, terrifying.
Painted. Yeah.
It
looks straight up painted.
Love this.
Yeah.
I just counted the pages, by the way, because I was intrigued. 60 pages of story.
There you go. I knew it felt long, in a good way. But
in a good way, because it doesn't feel over long. It feels very, very.
It means that when it's all said and done, it's going to be 180 pages of this really focused origin story of how Harley Quinn becomes Harley Quinn. And
if they made let's say they want to do a original series around this, I would not be adverse to that. If they could pull it off, this is a perfect story for that.
I think what I love about it is I think it's really well structured so far, and that this first book was all about the build up to going to speak to him. That was the ending of this book. It's all building up to that, and the nerves and the pressure and the fear of doing it. And then I can almost see the end of the second book being maybe the first time she kind of breaks bad, potentially, or
maybe,
or something like that.
I can see it happening in the middle,
maybe,
and then the consequences play out over the next.
you have this narration with the hindsight as well, which because there are things like some stylist choices. Like at one point she's walking out and you see that the Harley Quinn shadow behind her.
Well, yeah,
with the mallet and stuff.
Because that's something we didn't mention is that all the narration from Harley is like in the past tense. It's her talking about how she became Harley Quinn.
Right, and she's all about empathy. So I'm wondering too if like she gets caught in this cycle with Joker. So by the last part of that story, it'll be the last act, and it's where she's at now, right? She's moved on from him.
Do you know what it does as well? Is that it actually gives me a version of Harley that I actually can understand and actually root for to be redeemed at some point in the future, where she can become more of an anti-hero, where I'll want her to be that.
So, just hypothetically, let's say this sticks to this landing, you love it, and it makes you think of that Harley. And then you go and read something like, Harley and Ivy. It's like, okay, now she's at the point where she's in a post-Joker life and she's trying to be better. But you're thinking of this. It may
work better for me. I mean, she's still maybe like I like that even the past tense narrations not being jokey and being all like modern Harley like.
No, it's very serious.
I like how it fits
there
the
is
tone.
humor there to it too, because when she says she's trying to sleep, right, the only thing that works for her is alcohol. Yeah. And she's like, I didn't say it worked well. I just said it worked for a minute.
Yeah, but it's like a.
Don't look at me like that.
It's a straightforward sort of dark humor though. It's not like her being like.
No. And that's what I can deal with when it comes to...
Yeah, because I think the line was, I said it worked, I didn't say it helped.
Right.
That's smart for me. This is easily the best like Harley Quinn comic book I've ever read, in the sense that, not including her appearances in other books, I mean like in terms of like a Harley book. This is the best Harley Quinn issue of a comic I've ever read.
If it wasn't for the first White Knight, I would say this is the most I've ever enjoyed Harley. But I really enjoy her.
I went into this not knowing if Šejić could write, because I had never read anything he'd written before.
Yeah,
and barring like the short fanfic things he's posted.
Yeah, sure. On Twitter. Which, you know what though, for being fanfic, the whole Wonder Woman Lara Croft thing really
was adorable and incredibly well drawn. So
you know,
and obviously, I mean, we've mentioned some moments, but they are across the board, and this is just stunning and consistent and.
Yeah, we're talking about the standout moments, but the pacing, every facial expression, every panel. There's like the Joker interview tapes, just the way he shifts panel to panel.
This makes everything feel important. It makes it feel like an important story, and because one of the reasons why I don't like a lot of modern Harley stuff is because she's successful, we have to make her likable because people like buying her merchandise, and. That could be a fine motivator, but it feels kind of forced in the story. Where, like I say, this Harley,
it makes her likable in the sense that she's a normal person doing her job, and she's going to get broken.
She's going to be seduced and broken by a madman.
Well, yeah. Best way tensions always lead to hell, right?
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. And there's a fine line with Joker as well, because I heard I think it was actually Capullo and Snyder talking about their Joker. About how they don't see him as a crazy person, they see him as just a force of absolute evil. And I get what they mean by that, because it's when I'm talking about Michael Myers from Halloween, I like to talk about him
the shape.
The shape. He's a force of nature. He's not like just a crazy person. And I can see that argument for the Joker. Like, he is a force of nature. It's that end of the Dark Knight when he's talking to Batman. He's like, this is what the irresistible force meets the immovable object.
Yeah.
Because I always like to think of Batman as a force of nature as well. The idea that a person becomes a force of nature.
What would I do without you?
Yeah. You complete me.
I love that movie.
That movie's fantastic.
I went in with lowered expectations as well for this one, because it is Harley, yet it is Šejić, but we haven't had him right before. And the fact that it knocked me over and went, I care about this version of Harley.
Right.
He made me care about this.
And I was worried at first because I thought there was too much writing, but once I settled into the rhythm of it, the writing was all good that I didn't care.
It had a flow to it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, we all came here. We know Šejić can draw. We know he can draw the hell out of pretty much whatever he wants, and we love that. That's why we were interested in this book to start with.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that ad at the back says the second issue's out in October, and I don't believe
yes, it does.
It was a monthly book. This was solicited as.
He
probably got ahead.
Yeah, he had lead time on this bitch then.
Yeah. We know that he stopped working on all his other books.
Yeah, because this is 360-page books.
Which by the end of it, that's 6 months of comics.
Regular
right?
Well, more than that,
Yeah,
because that's
more
that's
than that.
9.
Each
20
issue
pages.
is 3 regular comics.
Yeah, so that's 9. That's 9
Okay.
comics worth. Anyway, yeah, Harleen issue 1's fantastic. So let's rate it. Matt, what you give it?
I think I'm gonna do it. I think I'm gonna give it a 10.
Whoa!
Yeah. It's real good, guys.
Connor.
I'm doing it as well.
Ah!
Joe, it's just, I'm like, is it a 10? And then I'm going, yeah, I think it kind of is.
Pete, 8.5. I don't like Harley.
There's all this pressure now. You're just giving it 2 10s. I have this pressure now to either make it a hat trick and make it one of the highest rated books we've ever done. Because I think there's been a couple of Doomsday Clocks we've all given a 10
I was
to.
going to say, it must be only Doomsday Clock issues that have ever got a triple 10.
I'm thinking about it.
But I mean, at least you're aware that, hey, it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I mean, it's closer than most books get, if nothing else.
9.5.
Of course.
It's a 9.5. How often do I give a 9.5 out? Not often. Master, you may as well just give it a 6.
No, I'm not like that. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, that's great. It's fantastic.
It is.
It's fantastic, and if the next 2 parts can like keep up this quality, because this is the sort of thing. This is a 60-page book. There's a lot of new books starting next month. If this had been like a 7, I might not have read more of it just because it's getting busy. But
as it is, it's
happening. I'm reading this next
finishing
month.
this.